Hi, everybody. Good morning still, I guess. Yes. We've got about 15 minutes left of the morning. I'm Chad Smith. I am one of the newer people at IBM. I've been there for 5 months, so still learning the big blue way. I am an associate partner focusing on artificial intelligence. My prior careers, I've been a CTO of one startup, a CIO of another that was acquired by Intel. The last one that was at Intel was focused on the last 7 years of my life building AI solutions around the world. So I've come from both industry side and the startup and entrepreneurial side. So looking forward to having this discussion from both sides.
And good morning, everyone. I'm Yolanda Wong. I am part of the same practice as Chad within our Global Business Services organization. My career trajectory is a little different than Chad's. I'm coming up on actually 26 years with IBM. And the reason I've been able to stay with IBM that long is the diversity of clients that I've had the opportunity to work with and the sorts of problems we've been able to work through. So I think of myself first as a problem solver for retail and consumer products companies. I've also had the opportunity to work with travel and transportation and financial services, but always through the lens of what is the problem my client is trying to solve in their relationship with their client, the customer, all of us.
So how many people here are in the retail sector? What sectors are people in? Let's just kind of open up the group. Let's start the interaction now. What groups, what types of industry are you in?
SaaS software.
SaaS. Okay, that's software. SaaS. Software. Software. Healthcare.
All right.
Consultants. Consultants. All right.
Media.
Media. All right.
Consumer products.
There we go.
Financial.
Financial. All right. Insurance. Okay. All right. So it's, once again, as you can see, a pretty diverse group of people and industries, and they're going to be a pretty diverse group of problems. So one of the things as we would start one of these design thinking processes is and walk through, this would be one of the red flags that would walk into the room for me. And I think most of y'all have probably done this. Having so many different ideas and different point of views is great, but having representatives is really a good idea to focus, because the purpose of where a lot of AI starts to fail is too wide a range of ideas, concepts. It's focused on problems and then breaking them down. So let's just keep that in mind as we kind of work through some of the stuff today.
And it's not that AI is only going to serve some use cases and some individuals, but it is very important as we all think about the opportunity to really be very clear about what is the North Star, who is the user, and the specific problem I'm solving. I've been working in the area of big data really since about 2013, and even before that, because retailers love to hoard their data. So, you know, the problem has never been lack of data. It's how do I actually get some insights out of that?
Right.
And so very much so the approach that we espouse and bring to our clients is that problem, business problem centric. So establish that North Star from an objective, what outcomes you're trying to drive to, and who is the person whose problems you're trying to solve.
Right. So how many in this room, one last time, one more question. How many have AI projects that they're working on or been involved in the last year? All right, let's see how many people are honest. How many people have had them fail? Just starting? Hold on, the failures? I'm keeping mine up because I've been involved in many that have failed. So that's one of the key things about these processes, right, is what were the failure points, right? The technology, did you build to the promise, or did you build to the reality of what the technology could do? Those are some of the things we're going to keep in mind. So I think as long as we learn from our failures, we will be good. All right, let's start. All right, turning it over to you.
So back to my time with my retail clients and consumer products clients. Again, I've been through many eras of technology advances, and retail has never been an early adopter of technology or insights. But it was really interesting because probably in the 2013 timeframe, banks, healthcare, other industries started saying, hey, we need to get closer to our customer, especially in the advent of healthcare reform. We need to be able to talk to a consumer and offer an individual policy.
Yep.
Maybe we can take a page from the retailers because they are so used to having that direct connection with consumers. But what that has led to is really a same set of challenges surfacing across lots of industries, so common themes. I've got piles and piles of data that I'm not actually monetizing. I've got lots of disconnected pieces of data that I use in pockets to solve siloed business problems. And I've got different insights from different parts of the organization that are all supposed to answer the same question. Anybody sit in a meeting where last week's sales did not match up from one group to the other? So, big data has a lot of opportunity, but it's also kind of surfaced a lot of opportunities and challenges for organizations. And I think at the same time, we went through that whole move to cloud. And so no longer is it okay, because the whole pace of industry has changed dramatically. No longer is it okay to say, all right, in 3 years, you're going to have the answer. And 5 years, we're going to deliver the ROI. Businesses need to be able to respond and react in the same time frame that consumers and their clients expect them to react. And so this has created new challenges and new stresses on organizations from a people perspective, from a process perspective, and certainly from a technology perspective.
Right, and if you think about business problems where we were saying we're such a diverse industry, there's fraud, let's just say, in financial, insurance, retail. Across the board, people are trying to make fraud. The methodologies and approaches that you can apply to those, there are some similarities, but implementations, even inside of industry, are different, but there are approaches that you can start to leverage and build on. So the types of feature extractions you would need to go after from the types of data you can start to build on and leverage from organizations to accelerate what you're going through. So once again, even though they're very diverse, there are some common accelerators across the board that can be leveraged and you can pull from as you move forward.
That's right. And IBM is a pretty diversified company. We work, our peers, our 400,000 peers. We cover a number of industries. But again, we see common threads and accelerators that we can bring from one industry to another, whether that it is at its heart an optimization opportunity, whether you're thinking about optimizing the financial returns from a portfolio. It's the same sort of thing. I'm trying to optimize my return from every dollar of marketing spend. So how do we bring those same accelerators and lenses to different problems? And frankly, as consumers, we don't think about, well, okay, I'm only going to compare my retail experiences with other retail experiences. I expect my utility company to show up and behave just like a hospitality company.
And that's a key point, because it's thinking about, we're in the tech track and the technology is driving what we're doing. But how many times have we run around with that hammer looking for the nail to hit because we've invented the really great widget, the great hammer, we're running around trying to find the business problem. So it's about thinking as well about what's the business problem I'm trying to solve, who am I going to be servicing with it, and then how does my technology enable that AI, that solution for that customer to drive the business value you're going after. So once again, it's back to technology is the driving force, but it's enabling what the business problem is, right? So think of it that way. And I think it really is helpful to always make sure, and that's when we go through some of the methodologies, it's making sure that the right business problems are aligned. And then that tech stack below, the really power, then you start picking which pieces can formulate, because it's not one thing. It never is. It's not just AI. It's not just machine learning. It's not just deep learning. It's not just feature extraction. It's just not rules. It can be a combination of any one of those things and more. Legacy versus new. It can be all of those things in order to make it work.
Great. So about 50% of the room has said we've started on AI. Maybe 25% said projects failed.
Right.
Why? Have you been able to pinpoint the problem, or is it lack of investment, lack of vision, just
overpromising?
Overpromising.
Yeah. That's a key. Yeah. What else? Who else had a failure and why? And they're the same lines as probably a lot of. It's not new, right? It's just new because it's the big buzzword. tech software and projects have failed, and they're a lot of the same ones, is, oh, yeah, well, it can do this. In the part that everyone forgets, but that's in 2 years. That's the vision. So it's vision versus reality, and that's part of why doing the approaches we're going to walk through here will go through. So
and I think one other interesting thing, a phenomena, as consumers, we're so used to talking to Alexa and Siri and Google.
Right.
But when we think about the sorts of insights and decisions we're trying to augment through artificial intelligence, the implications in healthcare or in banking, right, are far greater than if Siri says, I'm sorry, I didn't understand that, right? So, how do you also kind of bridge that expectation? Well, of course you're going to solve it overnight to something that is bulletproof, robust, and is going to sustain your enterprise.
So let's just kind of jump into what we're calling the cognitive enterprise on our next piece here. So reinventing. So once again, this is, we built kind of the information from this for more consumer, packaged goods, retail focus, but a lot of the numbers apply across the board because it is a common problem. There's the early adopters, the financial side, that are in here as well. But if you look at it, the expected systems, the big number up here to think about is $57 billion on AI. We're all in it for a reason, and it's reinvented itself from what it was a while ago. If you look at the different numbers, I'm not going to sit here and go through them all, get some pictures real quick, but we're going to kind of hit on a few of these. But if you look at the executives, 85% are having intelligent supply chain automation issues. I mean, from this diverse group, that's going to fit a lot of industries as well. So once again, it's a common problem across the board, and some of the tools and features that you would be using to extract will be leverageable across the board.
One factoid from here that I think is really interesting, if you could just go back one, Chad. 86% consumer products executives indicated they will be using intelligent automation in product design and development. It's always an interesting question. We don't think about AI as artificial intelligence. We really think about it as augmented intelligence, because what we want to be able to do is remove all of the rote, manual, repetitive tasks to give your people the opportunity to do the deep thinking, the innovative thinking. So surface what they need that is different, managed by exception, is AI on steroids.
Right, and I mean, so a key on that is if you think of really the augmentation or an assistant, has the ability to look across the mountain of data that's available and come back and give you the information that's most relevant to the problem at hand so that you can make an informed decision. So it's not there, and that's the power of the tech, right? Is that I'm going through and looking and I'm helping inform an individual that they can make a more informed decision. In healthcare, can they help a doctor? In fraud cases, can I look at a fraud and tell you why I think it's fraud so that an investigator can get ahead of those? Those are the things that are extremely powerful within that automation process, and that's another piece that's really industry agnostic. I'll let you go.
So again, we've been chatting. This is not new, but again, the convergence of where technology is, the convergence of data availability, the convergence of new approaches for working is allowing companies not just to go faster, more efficiently, but really rethink what their business structure looks like. And what we're seeing instead of these linear value chains are really these ecosystems, because frankly, no one can afford to be the very best in everything. So part of the new business models for companies is understanding what I need to be differentiated in to deliver on my brand promise, and then create the right ecosystems, flexible ecosystems, secure ecosystems to share the information, share the work, and make everything more effective.
Effective, and once again, it's the right piece, the right tech, and that doesn't always mean one company's stack versus another. It is about leveraging what's the best for that problem, whether that's something from, that you have built in-house versus what something IBM might offer or anyone else that you have internal. So once again, always think and look to see what's the best fit for what you're trying to solve. and understand how that can then be, as we move forward to production, how does that then move forward? Because there's some other keys that are big points to failure from AI that I've failed on personally, which was taking advantage of certain types of technology, worked great in prototype, but path to production and enterprise scale, that's where we failed, right? Because we fell off the path and the amount of effort to actually lock it into that enterprise scale. It's always great in the lab sometimes, but you've got to also understand, how do I then get this to production? I know you don't always want to think about it while you're trying to do the fast fail, but you also have to understand if it's even feasible.
Yep, and we've lived that problem in retail in spades for years, because you do it once, now you got to roll it out to the entire chain. And it's one thing just to think about the effort to roll out that technology, but think about all the change management. So whether it is a bank branch or a hospital, clinic location, all of those individuals, people, humans, who we are asking to do certain work, right? We're changing, we're blowing their minds, we're changing their world.
So, as we look, this is pretty, I'm going to kind of skip through a few. I know we're starting to run a little on time. We want to be able to get through, but as you think about the workflows of the technology, as you work across, most of you have seen this, have this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time pontificating on it. I think we've all drawn these on the board. If we'd like to go into more detail, I'll come back to it towards the end, and we can kind of walk through it. But what I wanted to get through is, as we look here, so this was some questions that have been asked, and if you look at the infrastructure and the technologies, what's the right skills and the right resources, right? We wouldn't be in this room if this was easy, right? We wouldn't be looking for more people if we could get through it. Some of the biggest points of some of the biggest struggles you're going to have is getting the right people. The other one is the right culture. Because going after AI and going after some of these ones, first of all, you got to dispel the fears. I'm not here to replace every single person in a room. That's not generally the goal. The goal is to make the people that you have more efficient with the information they have, right? That's a common goal that a lot of the processes across industries and across vertical. Fraud management, it's about how can I get the right information? How can I make the right offer and get that in front of it? How can I continue this conversation in an intelligent manner? And at what point do I then hand it off to someone a human that got them down the line? Those are efficiencies, but that's a cultural change. And also it's an understanding that the marketure is one thing, the reality is another, and this is the steps that we're going to go through to get there. It's going to be a journey. Hop on board, it's going to be fun. So those are the things that we'll walk through as well.
Yeah, and this, excuse me, the skills issue and concern. This data actually comes from one of our ongoing pieces of primary research. So we have a think tank called the IBM Institute for Business Value, and we conduct primary research with industries, with industry leaders, and we also, every couple years, will survey the C-suite. And so whether you're talking to the CEO, CIO, CFO, Chief Human Resources Officer, skills continues to appear as one of the top challenges. And as anybody who's ever lived through a automated replenishment implementation, we know what happens when the user community, the business community doesn't buy in. We end up creating an even bigger problem. So how do we start this process and take the organization through the process so that people come along and don't feel like they're being displaced, and develop the new skills, both in terms of technology and comfort level with technology, but new ways of working with each other, frankly.
Right. So I think it's a pretty good list of the ideas, and that if your employees don't buy it, if your users don't want to use it, it could be the best piece of technology out there. It's still going to fail.
That's right.
So, all right. So, how do we go through and address some of these ones, right? So think big. Once again, it's back to the reality of, as we would go through in a typical exercise. Who here has done a design thinking workshop? We're all in the valley. We've been down here. We've all done them. So we've all know our stickies. We all know our notes, right? We all put our ideas on. We all vote. It's a wonderful, wonderful way to get a lot of people's ideas. And as we all know, one of the main reasons you do this is you can do it quietly. I don't have to think my ideas are going to be bad. So it enables and empowers the users to go after this.
And what is also really powerful is when you see the collection of all of the ideas,
Yes.
you often say, oh, it's not just me
Right.
who thinks that. So you can really see where the friction points are for the organization.
Correct.
And as importantly, having that person who's upstream from you, the person who's downstream from you,
Right.
it creates this magic problem solving.
Right, yeah. You're no longer alone in your fear. So the big ideas can come from this. And how do we take, I'm cognizant of the time. I know we mentioned it, the thing. There's about 4 minutes till that other one started. We still have some time. I'd love for everybody to stay. If people want to go, I understand. I'm not going to get offended or think that I've run everybody out of the room. So it's about 5 minutes out from that. So think big. What are we doing there? So when you're doing, think of the big ideas. No idea is dumb. Bring them up there, get the ideas, do the voting, and understand what it is to the business. Start small. Why start small? Once again, the top of the line there. Fail 3 out of 5 times. An experiment. Because what you're doing is really quickly starting small to understand if what we thought as a collective group sounded like a good idea, but is it real? Can we do it? Does it actually work? Can it add the value we think? So take the big idea, chunk it up into small consumable pieces, align it to the reality of the expectations of what can be done in that time frame, and then deliver. And then you deliver the next. And where you start to do is then you start getting the excitement, you start getting the culture, and you start getting the understanding behind it. So it's a methodology for
Yes,
that.
always better to over-deliver on expectation than under-deliver,
Right.
over-promise. And so quick wins gets that groundswell going. Then everybody wants to get on board.
So, and that is where work differently, right? Because unless you're in a startup, which, as I said, I've spent 7 years of my life in. I used to have a lot of hair. And it used to be very brown, and now it's out, and what's still there is scared to death and turning white from startup land, right? And, that's just kind of the reality of the world it is, and we get it. So when you get into these other big organizations, that's not how they run. They waterfall. We go and we do a big plan. We draw out the plan. It's 2 years out. This is thinking differently, and it takes people some time. So think of it that way. All right. All right. Well, so you want to take the first stab at the part of the garage?
Sure. So our approach, very Silicon Valley based. So we IBM have really embraced design thinking, but more importantly, user-centric design for many years now. Again, we can't afford to be just dropping things on people's desks and expect them to work differently. So the new approach really is, again, user-centric design. Design is very important, as well as the functionality. Reimagining through these conversations
Yes.
across the organization what great could look like.
Right.
So unconstrained thinking, back to the think big,
Right.
and then build the appropriate roadmap along the way. Never losing sight of what is that North Star we're trying to
Right.
achieve, and again, course correcting in these sprints to make sure that we're either moving forward in the right direction or if we need to course correct.
So then I think this is really one of the key things if you think about it from a technology perspective. How many people have built a great algorithm that had great results and given it to people, but they don't understand it? You can't explain it. So having the end user in mind as you're working through this, how do I want my end user to consume the information I've got? So if I'm going to go to a business owner and I'm going to give them an algorithm to show that X is going to happen, trust me. How can I make it visually in the experience that I want them to go through to buy into it? So think about that. That's where this brings in all of those different aspects of that. So it gives that user the deeper user insights because they're not having to try to understand an Excel spreadsheet or some numbers or what's going to happen. So think about that, and that's part of what we go through is who is the consumer of this and how do I want them to make sure to consume it correctly? So that's a key in making AI. I've failed many of times because I showed a bunch of numbers to someone It was the right answer, but their mind couldn't wrap around it, so it stopped there.
Right. And an important piece about AI, we call it, personalization at scale. It's not just about personalizing the marketing message for each individual, but it is about personalizing that experience, personalizing the learning path, and having capability to identify when somebody is struggling and may need a different sort of information. Or for that matter, is the model actually performing as I would expect to, or do I need to retune? Is there some new extenuating circumstance that I had not thought of before that I now need to factor into my decision-making?
So it's personal about the thing that you're going after. And a thing can be personal, even though it has a person in it, but it doesn't have to be. It could be the recommendation about what's happening in a case. It's about the thing that's interest. All right. All right.
So some examples where we have really helped our clients bring this to life. We have been bringing our garage methodology. I think the count is over 500 enterprises.
No, I didn't see anyone diving under the tables. If everybody dived under the tables, I'm from North Carolina. So if I lived in Japan for 3 years, and the way I always knew if there was an earthquake, and it was going to be a bad one, if the Japanese staff started going under the desk, then I knew it was a bad one. So I looked around, I saw no one else panic, so I was like, oh, okay.
Yes, and our buildings are meant to sway. So over 500 clients where we've helped them not just run a one-off garage workshop, not just one-off design thinking sessions, but really instantiate this garage methodology and approach and structure for working in their organizations.
Right.
So Kraft Heinz is one where we have helped them tackle some problems across supply chain, across marketing, across personalization. In the kind of the other end of the spectrum, we've also used this garage methodology to help a wholesale distributor really reinvent the way that they engage with their truckers.
Right. And so think about it.
Okay, that sounds very bad. Whatever that is.
That sounds like equipment moving, not
Yeah, it sounds like
earthquake.
equipment down below. I can hear a beeping now, like a backup. Okay. Yeah, they'll announce something if it's. But we'll just keep going. If we see people moving, I'll give the all clear on the thing.
Yeah.
No. But one thing is too is the thing about doing a garage methodology though is in order to get it working is it is a collaborative one. It's two people, and the way we work it, it's IBM working directly with the customer and their teams to build it out. It's not just IBM coming in and saying how to do it. I think that's the only way to get that adoption is to really get in and leverage and work through these POCs together, co-collaborate on these types of efforts.
And never in these garages is there a preconceived answer.
No.
So we ask the organization, the clients, when we run, even once we've instantiated a garage, in terms of the pipeline of work that flows through the garage.
It's very agile.
Come with the problem. And collectively, we'll think of the answer.
Right.
We'll determine what is the metric of whether or not we're making progress towards solving that,
Yes.
or if it needs to be scrapped. So in some cases, like UPS, they wanted to find a different way because there are so many restrictions on what needs to be inspected and different tariff charges. Could we find a non-manual way
Correct.
to inspect and speed that process through? So in that case, could we use computer vision to see what's in the box and then map that against tariff codes?
Right.
But in the case of a utility company in Canada, they had a problem with lines going down because in bad weather, ice would form and it would disrupt transmission of electricity. And so, someone very jokingly said, well, we just need to get all the bears in Canada to shake the poles because that clears the ice. And everyone got a great laugh out of it. But then but wait, we send helicopters out routinely to inspect the lines from the air. And the downdraft from the blades gives enough of a vibration to have the same effect.
So once again, it's not always within solutions. It doesn't always have to be a technology one. It brings other ones out. So where AI fits, once again, it's back to where is it the right place with what you have? Is it an augmentation of what you're already building? And how can we enrich an enhancement?
Right. And we start small with all of these garages. So again, the idea is fail fast, learn fast, right? And so we take work, while the North Star may be a very big idea.
Correct.
We break it down into components that can be achieved in a series of sprints. So we'll define the body of work, we'll drive towards an MVP, make a call. Is it working? Is it not working? Right. Do we ditch it? Do we enhance it? And so we can work through use cases from MVP, maybe a second sprint around to enhance the MVP, to take it all the way through to pilot, and then ultimately into production.
Right. And that, once again, so that's a key thing about how do you become successful with AI. Understand where you can bite off to show success. And that's where we come in, and that's where you can...
I promise.
From Florida.
Yeah.
I'm from here.
My colleague upstairs doesn't feed anything, so it's just
Something in the basement. Oh, you texted. Oh, thank you. All right, there we go. That's intelligence in action, not artificial. That was real intelligence in action right there, everyone. Nothing artificial about that.
I think what is also really critical about the garage process is you, just like the work is going to flex up, flex down, the skill sets you need and the problems that you're going to see are going to flex up and down. So in some of our clients, it's almost like people get a rotation into the garage,
right,
based on the skill set that is determined, right, is required to solve the problem. Right. So that, because in many organizations still, particularly as AI is just taking root, I'm dedicated to marketing, Chad's dedicated to supply chain, right, and really what you want is that cross-pollination.
Right. Is there any questions? We've been going. I forgot to ask. Anyone? Come on.
Well, yeah, I mean.
Yes, here we go.
I wanna go to that process, right? Because
right,
the
sure,
devil's in the details.
Yep.
So how do you bring the right people? Because we all have done design thinking, but how do you bring the right people that are going to address AI? Because at the end of the day, AI is such a big exactly. It's like people talking about blockchain, right? Those are concepts that are very broad.
Right.
So how do you, with your customer, bring the right people to the table,
right,
so that you can identify the problems that you're trying to resolve with this new platform technology?
Right. Well, I skipped ahead just so we kind of go through a garage prioritization kind of process as you would look. So once again, a design thinking ideation workshop kind of starts it off, right? The right people with come with an ideas of the things of the problem to the business. But with that, you work through, okay, here's the business problems, and then we back into what do we have from a technology perspective that could meet it. You work through the different ongoing use cases that are out there. But once again, it's about, as you can see, or maybe you can't with the print up here, this is, you've got, in order to really be successful, you have the directors of marketing, you've got the CFOs, you've got the different CIOs, you've got to get the right people, because if in an innovation group, which we've all probably been in, if I go into a process, I can go and innovate and I can come up with a great idea, but what do we have to do after that? I have to generally go through and find the business side to buy it. So one of the things that I would look at is, what's the level of business? How does this tie to the objectives and the goals? How are we going to go through? Because that's the other hard part. Because while it might be really cool to go build, does it solve the business problem? Is it going to address? Is it going to actually make money for the company? Are you going to get the right buy-in?
I get all of that. The challenge that I see
right
now is that you've got a list of people that have different objectives, personal
most
objectives,
definitely,
in-group objectives.
Yeah.
And they need to keep, we're talking about large companies.
Yes.
They need
Yeah.
to keep
Yes.
companies producing
Yes.
results, or Wall Street is going to hit them.
Right.
So in that context,
yes,
how do you get the buy-in to go into potential could be a disruption,
right,
in the way that they do business, how do you get that across?
You want to take, I mean, how we've done it with,
So it's interesting because if this is going to sound terrible, and I'm the world's biggest data science fangirl. If it's the CIO sponsoring a garage, it's probably not going to work. It's really got to be someone who is responsible for driving innovation for the company, or is struggling to meet a hard number business target or outcome.
right.
And then it becomes a question of how can technology help?
Right.
In some cases, again, we've started the garage conversation at the highest level. So, you know, if you think about maybe coming out of a board meeting, right? And if we have the sponsorship of a COO or a CEO, right? It's easy to kind of get that first layer into a room and at least start feeding the funnel. We've also had cases where we started within one functional area. So even if I think about supply chain, it's a lot of things, right? From demand planning, supply planning, logistics, warehousing, and so on. Or it could also include the manufacturing piece. So again, but it could be this wide or this wide, but without that business North Star or outcome that you're delivering.
Yeah. Well, and part of it is too, is you have to, as part of the ideation is, how are we going to rate these? How does the organization, how do we put level of importance? So as you can see here on the lower part, really is you start to rate each one of them from how hard is it to implement, how big is it, what's the potential impacts. You come up and you agree as an organization, as this process, what's going to be this voting process as well. So that's part of it as well, is how you might vote and how you might vote. Well, as an part of the thing is to come to an agreement of what's the level of importance. And we will sit here, and I think, as we said, all the design thinking shops, we will take the stickies, you'll put them up here, you'll put the ideas, you'll cluster them together to find commonalities. We'll work through the process, we put them through a voting, and at the end, it's an investment that the group is going through. And then with that breaking down, is it easier? Can we break it down? Is this a 6? Those are the types of things, so it's not one magic pill. Each organization you go through has a little bit different, how they want to rate things, and then that's why it becomes very flexible. You know, is it a no-brainer? Can we save $100 million with this and we have to invest $2 million to do it? No-brainer. It might be disruptive, but the company's going to, you know, those are the things that you have to put into play, and you have to put them in. And once you get them up on the board, what you think's a no-brainer, I might not think's a no-brainer. I might not. And that's where that collaborative debate, let's call it, they can get pretty heated, but that's the purpose, right? It's a group think. It's okay to disagree. Yeah. It's okay to have different ideas of why things are. And it's okay to do that process, because at the end, the collaboration of the group from different facets will come together with what's really important. Does that make?
Yeah, it makes sense. Can I ask an anecdotal question?
Sure.
Out of 500 garages with this composition, how many move forward to a project, an AI project that has been disruptive, maybe not, but that has made the company make a leap forward, percentage-wise?
Well, I mean, of the fail often, I would say a lot. I mean, that's why I've had quite a few that have failed in 2 to 3 weeks. But we thought it was a big idea, but in 2 to 3 weeks, we realized it wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right?
And the flip side is, again, like UPS, this image recognition, so that the correct tariff codes are being applied. They started that in one country, and they're now making plans to scale that broadly as different tariffs come into play for more and more countries. So that's one big opportunity of success. You know, with Kraft Heinz, we've seen garages that have led to pretty significant changes in the way that they are scheduling the manufacturing line. So lots of money saving. And some of those leaders in the manufacturing plants are like, why am I talking to you? You don't know what I do.
And one of these, I mean, I just was involved with one that it was an organization that needed disruption and was trying to get the people on board. They realized that they needed a garage to go through the process to understand how disruptive it was going to go through, so that they could align the things, so they could lay out the right projects to go after, right? They needed to go in and start the process of understanding and working through what they thought the impact would be with the overall ones. And then we went through, and then that then led to them understanding the methodology and then us working through the next level. So sometimes, depending on the organization and the resistance, you're starting, you might get to start at Go, and sometimes you can be all the way, on reading Railroad on Monopoly board, moving around the board. It just really depends on the organization, but understand that the methodologies of how to go through it, it's about bringing people together with common ideas and making sure the way you get buy-in, you listen to me. We might not have gone with my idea, but you listen to me and I understand. It's in the queue, and by the way, the next time we finish one, mine might be the one that comes up priority, or it could feed, or it could morph. And so it's that group think. It's not 3 people sitting up on high saying, do it. And I think that's the big change.
I think, and remarkably, one of the biggest successes for some clients is we just put to rest a hypothesis or a myth. It's like, then we can just stop talking about it. You either prove it or disprove it.
The water cooler talk of, if we would have done this, we would, who's done that? If we would have just done this, we would have been great. Wouldn't it have been great if you'd have had 3 to 4 weeks to prove whether it was right or wrong? Because you thought it could save 10 million, we proved that it couldn't, or we proved that it actually could save 50. But it's that getting them in and getting in a cadence of how we go about it and how we rate and how we compare. I know we are coming up really just to kind of the open discussion. So once again, the methodology with our stickies is this. It's very empowering to use design thinking principles for any major problem you're having, but especially within AI. You identify the high level. You then, as an organization, understand the business value and the users and what they're going to go after. And then the next thing you do is you break it into chunks that's small enough so that you can show success. So you can avoid the overpromise. Because what I'm going to show you is in 2 to 3 weeks, I can do this. And in another 2 to 3 weeks, it'll do this. And what that gets is excitement around what is happening. Building on it. It can start to extend, but you can keep track of the North Star because, as we all know, a little success breeds 50 new ideas. And then how those 50 ideas could change what you're doing, you can now also help people understand the impact of those changes.
I have a question. So you're saying 2 to 3 weeks. Do y'all ever do anything shorter than 2 weeks? Garage engagement? Is that ever a...
I've seen them as small as 1 to 2, but it really depends on the problem and what we're trying to go after.
I think
and the organization.
Certainly design thinking workshops just define the problem, define an approach. Yes.
But
but to actually develop a prototype. Yeah. And we will often run a few sprints to get to a prototype or an MVP.
Yes.
But again, we just want to make sure that we have those very quick cycle of check-in.
You think of an agile methodology as well, right? But it's a complete, at the end of 2, it should be something that is showable and workable and what's priority. So once again, if we've deemed that the user experience is something, we should have screens that enable the people to see what it could be. It might be but am I going the right direction? I can get that feedback and I can adjust. I think we are right up on our time. Are there any questions?
We've actually just released, so you can actually go to the IBM website and go through badging certification on our garage methodology.
Yes.
If anyone is interested, it's available for free for right now. Same way we offer education on our approach and kind of our nuances as it pertains to design thinking.
Right.
But user-centric.
Yeah. If you have any questions, I'll be here all day. Look me up on LinkedIn. So Chad Smith, just not the drummer from the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
You wish.
I don't want to look like Will Ferrell. So.
All right, for those of you that are hungry, lunch in the Grand Ballroom again. And if you want to stay back and talk to Yolanda or Chris after this, the room is yours. So whatever you like to do.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone, for your
everybody.
participation.